This slideshow is about how industrialization had changed America by 1911. It had created thousands of factories that required millions of workers. Many of these workers came from struggling European nations, and these jobs offered hope and dreams of a new life. Hundreds of people worked for the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. But industrialization had a dark side. The workers were not treated like humans. They were just parts of a much larger machine, pumping out cars or lamps or women's shirtwaists. The Industrial Revolution is simply the switch from homemade to factory-made products. Clothing was one of the first items that became industrialized or made in factories, not at home. Making clothes at home was very time-consuming and difficult. It was much easier and cheaper to buy clothes that were made in factories and bought from a store. This revolution began in England during the Revolutionary War and spread all over the world in about 100 years. Today, all of your clothes, most of your food, what you're sitting on now, and the computer you're using are all factory-made. You are a complete product of the industrial age. Congratulations. For 30 years, from the 1890s until the 1920s, the Gimsted girl look and the shirtwaist were the top fashion for all women. Shirtwaists are a style of blouse or a women's shirt. They were very popular in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Americans bought $1.3 billion worth of clothes in the year 1909. That would equal $23 billion now in 2012. And the Triangle factory owners, Max Planck and Isaac Harris, wanted a piece of this money. Their factory cranked out 2,000 shirtwaists every day. The factory made over $1 million per year. The more shirtwaists they could make, the more money they could have. A large modern factory like the Triangle didn't just pop up. Industrialization started small, with very small shops called sweatshops. Anyone could get a contract with a clothing company to make clothes for them. And once you had a contract, then you could make a tiny factory inside your apartment. Then you would get new immigrants called greenhorns to do all of the sewing work for you. The owners would sweat them, forcing these workers to work faster and longer hours for less wages until they quit. And then the sweatshop owner would just go out and find some more new immigrants desperate for work and do it all over again. Max Planck and Isaac Harris started off as greenhorns being sweated. Then they got their own contract and hired their own greenhorns and started their own sweatshop. They worked hard and grew their small sweatshop into the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, the largest shirtwaist factory in the entire United States. Imagine having to live here with all the noise of the sewing machines and everything crowded together. A sweatshop was a business and a home to someone's family. Bigger factories. Bigger factories are more efficient, that's important, and can produce many more products, also important, than smaller factories. All of the workers, the raw materials, and the machines are all in one location and can be easily watched over by the owners. This makes the costs of the product go down and allows the entrepreneur to make more profits. Max Planck and Isaac Harris had started off as greenhorns working in tiny sweatshops. Then they started their own company that grew into the Triangle Shirtwaist Company, which was the largest garment factory in the United States. So, who were the Triangle factory owners? Well, both of the Triangle owners were Jewish immigrants from Russia. They had both worked their way up from workers in tiny East Side sweatshops into rich factory owners. Max Planck was a Russian Jew, and he started as a garment contractor at the age of 25. He was the one who handled the money. Isaac Harris was also a Russian Jew, but he was older, and he was a very skilled tailor and knew the clothing business. They started the Shirtwaist Company in 1900 when they had both been in the United States for about 10 years. In 1902, they moved into the Ash Building on 29 Washington Place. The factory was on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of a 10-story loft-style building. The Ash Building was perfect for the new Triangle factory. The 8th and 9th floors had enough electricity to power the 480 electric sewing machines that Max and Isaac planned on having there. 8 rows of long tables would make it easy to move the pieces of the shirtwaists along. Also, there was only 2 stairways, which were either guarded by a watchman or securely locked behind doors. No workers could sneak out early or steal any lace without getting caught. This was going to be a big issue years later when they had their fire. The Ash Building still stands on the corner of Washington Place and Green Street in New York City, but it has since been renamed. Most people that pass this building today don't know it was the scene of the worst workplace tragedy in New York history until 9/11. 146 workers died there. Many jumped from the 9th floor windows and fell 100 feet to their deaths on the sidewalk. Some of these victims were your age or even younger. Cheap labor, that's an interesting situation. It's much like which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which came first, the factories or cheap labor? In any case, immigrants, or people that just moved to the United States, were desperate for work and would take any job for whatever money they could get. They averaged $5 a week for a 100-hour work week. The normal work week in the United States right now is 40 hours. Thousands of new immigrants, called greenhorns because they didn't know anything, arrived in New York City every week, so there were always more workers than there were jobs, which meant keeping a job was very difficult. There was always someone waiting at the door to take your job and work longer hours for even less money. Ironically, the United States 100 years ago was known for its cheap factories making cheap products that were cheaper than everyone else's. We were the China of 1911. How did we do it then? And how does China do it now? Well, that's easy. Cheap labor. Child labor. Child labor might sound better than going to school, but these kids had to do adult jobs for the same number of hours as adults, but for much less money. They were also completely illiterate. They couldn't even recognize their own name, much less write it, which means that they will never get well-paid jobs as adults. Now, in early American history and in Europe, there were no laws against child labor. Children were expected to go to work. School and education was something that only the most wealthy children and families got to do. Poor American and immigrant families only survived by sending their children to work. Bosses liked hiring kids because they could pay them much less money, which meant more profits for the boss. Rose Maltese was only 14 years old and working 52 hours a week for $7 a week when she died in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911. The Triangle Shirtwaist Company was a model modern factory in the Industrial Revolution. It had high volume of products made by many workers, and this equaled increased profits for owners Max Blank and Isaac Harris, who were also known as the Shirtwaist Kings. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was the largest shirtwaist maker in the United States. They made over 2,000 shirtwaists every day, and the company made over $1 million every year. Now, click on the box to view a short movie about what it was like to work inside the Triangle Shirtwaist Company.
And as electricity comes to the cities, more and more people arrive with it. By 1900, nearly 4 million women are working in U.S. cities. In just 40 years, that figure has more than quadrupled. Urban factories are pounding out 75% of all consumer products in the U.S. Places like this, modern steel frame buildings equipped with all the latest technology. Otis electric elevators, Bell telephones, Singer sewing machines. But packing so many people into tall buildings is a disaster waiting to happen. The United States is hurtling into the modern age, symbolized by megacities rising up all across the continent. By 1909, Americans are spending nearly $23 billion a year on ready-made clothes. This factory is producing 12,000 garments a week, known as shirtwaists. They're the latest fashion for the working woman. New York City, March 25th, 1911. 4:45 p.m., the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, 8th floor. 260 girls work here, most of them teenagers. Someone, we don't know who, tosses a match or maybe a cigarette into the scrap bin. Eva Harris, a seamstress, smells burning.
There's a fire, Mr. Bernstein.
Production manager Samuel Bernstein grabs one of the 3 fire pails. But the fire is already spreading. There's a mad dash for the exit, but it is too narrow. Only one at a time can pass through. It's been designed that way so their bags can be checked for stolen fabric. There's a fire hose, but it's not working.
No water!
The only way to warm the floors above is through the switchboard 2 floors up on the 10th floor.
Hello, switchboard.
10th floor.
Fire. There's a fire.
Put me through to the 9th floor.
Hello?
She drops the phone and runs to get help. The message never reaches the 9th floor. Samuel Bernstein races up the main stairs to help the 160 workers trapped there. But blocking the front door, there's a barrel of motor oil. On the 9th floor, flames are already shooting through the walls and windows. The girls on 9 rush to the fire escape, but it's locked. Only 2 escape routes are left on the 9th floor. The elevator and the metal fire escape. Kate Weiner makes it to the elevator door, but she's lost her sister.
Everyone was knocking and crying for the elevator to come up. Suddenly, the elevator came, and the girls rushed in. I was searching for my sister Rose, but I couldn't find her. The flames were coming toward me, and I was being left behind. I felt the elevator was leaving the 9th floor for the last time.
She's the last person to get to the last elevator. More than 100 girls are left behind to die. The only escape route left is the metal fire escape, but it collapses. Firemen arrive with the biggest ladder in New York City. But it's 30 feet too short. "4:58 p.m. The girls trapped on the 9th floor are out of options. In desperation, they jump. "5:15 p.m. The entire blaze is over in less than half an hour. 146 people die in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. There's a trial, but the owners walk free. It remains the deadliest workplace disaster in New York City history until September 11th, 2001. But some good does come out of it.
This dramatic tragedy sparks a wave of reform. So you begin to get new restrictions and a new conversation about what to do to prevent this kind of tragedy from happening. But it did not stop, of course, that tragedy itself.
Unions forced management to take responsibility for the lives of their workers. The Life Safety Code, now used in all 50 states, is a direct result of this fire. It's why doors now open outwards in public buildings. Why automatic sprinkler systems or multiple exits are now the law.
What methods did Max and Isaac use to make the Triangle the best factory around? Well, as you can see in the picture of the inside of the Triangle factory before the fire, there were large numbers of workers very close together, which made them very easy to watch over. There were no interior walls to block the view, or on March 25, 1911, block the flames. Many of the machines were closely packed together. There were 240 on 8 different tables on both the 8th and 9th floor. Scraps were kept under the tables, which kept them out of the way, but hundreds of pounds of these cotton scraps fed the fire that killed 146 of these people. There were few exits for workers to sneak away from or to use as escape from a fast-moving and deadly fire. The Triangle workers. Triangle owners Max Blank and Isaac Harris employed hundreds of young immigrant girls because they worked for very small wages and the neighborhood around the factory was full of them. Most of these girls were single Jewish girls from Poland and Russia. The rest were poor single girls from Italy, with only a very small number of American-born workers. On your note sheet, answer the following question. How is the Triangle factory an example of industrialization? Think about what the Industrial Revolution does and what the Triangle factory did. This is a photo of the building that housed the Triangle Shirtwaist Company. It was taken by me, Mr. Deserto, in 2009. The windows on the top 3 floors, the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors, were where the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was located, and they are between 85 and 110 feet above the cement pavement. All the workers trapped in the building during the fire on March 25, 1911, died. Most were so badly burned that they couldn't even be identified by their families. All the workers that jumped out of these same windows also died. Their bodies, while broken, were easier for their families to identify because they were not so horribly burned.